Ramli, I'm just going to quickly introduce you. So
Sweet.
I guess this is your second time coming in and presenting to Growth U. I guess we've known each other for probably a couple of years. I think I did a session with you guys. You've done a couple with us now. I'm going to promote Ramli's book. So those of you who don't know Ramli, he has an amazing book uh, called Product Led Onboarding: How to Turn Users into Lifelong Customers. You know, a lot of marketing books kind of like stay pretty high level. This one shows screenshots. It gets into the weeds and into the details of the tactical things that you actually need to do. It walks through the framework and then goes into the tactics around how to actually make your onboarding better. And it's absolutely phenomenal. Ramli is the managing director of the Product Led Growth Group, and they run their own cohorts as well. And they're fantastic programs. I've just seen it kind of from the periphery, but hopefully at some point I'll actually get to take the program. And we're just thrilled that he's here today. He's gonna drop a bunch of knowledge. I'm gonna turn it over to you, Ramli. Thank you so much for being here. And we just for everybody's awareness, we are going to record this and we'll send this out after to the large group of folks that can't make the live version of these cohorts. So Ramli, take it away. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thanks for that intro, Craig. I really appreciate it. Hey, everybody. Want to make sure that this is interactive. So I'm going to be asking a few questions and feel free to chime in the chat in here. But let me just share my screen. Just want to make sure everybody can see my screen. Just thumbs up. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks again for that intro, Craig, and for everybody else who welcome me here. And I'm just gonna talk a little bit about onboarding and why it's so important in growth, particularly with that. Once again, a little bit about me. I work with hundreds of companies like Mixpanel, Ubisoft, and OutSystems to improve their onboarding. That's exactly my jam here. I wrote the book about it, as Craig showed, and you can check out the first chapter for free at onboardingbook.com. But today we're going to be talking about why onboarding is super critical to your company's growth, as well as like a simple process. There's this four-step process. It looks so simple, but it's so powerful to really improve that user onboarding or product onboarding. So I'm gonna introduce like a six-step framework to turn more of your users into lifelong customers. So let me start off with a story with me back then. This is 5-6 years ago, before I knew about any kind of scheduling tool like Calendly, where I also host a podcast called Growth Marketing Today, where before I had any kind of tool, I would go back and forth with a podcast guest trying to find a perfect time, and we would go 3 emails in, and we still haven't found the right time. And how many of you, before you found any scheduling tool, I'm seeing Craig raise up his hand, where you're like, oh man, this is so frustrating, especially if you're in a different time zone. I'm based out of Toronto, Canada, so I'm in Eastern time zone, and trying to schedule somebody in Europe or somebody in Australia, it is like, okay, is it minus 13 or is it plus 5? Can get really, really confusing. And one of my podcast guests and friend was like, hey, Ramli, have you heard about this tool called Calendly? It makes it super easy. So I remember signing up for this. Like, once again, this is like 5-6 years ago. And I was like, oh, okay, sign up for it. The whole experience for me as a first time user was super smooth. One of the interesting things they did is, if you're familiar with Calendly, you get a link and you're supposed to share it to people. But sharing it out to somebody is very risky. So one of the things they did was they asked me to book a time with myself to address that whole situation. So one of their onboarding steps is, Ramli, book a time with yourself now after I've connected my calendar. So I found that really interesting. I just remember it being super smooth. I felt secure enough to send it to my guests. And I remember just like, oh man, my life will never be the same after this. It really is this magical moment. I feel like there's this new thing that I can do that I could never have done before. It feels like I've gotten a new superpower. And really that's what can happen with when you have a great onboarding experience. And that's for me is a great onboarding experience. I just want to ask, and once again, I'd love to get your engagement here. Which product has, quote unquote, to you the best onboarding experience? And feel free to type it in the comments. I'd love to see exactly which products you've seen. I see Guy said Superhuman. Craig said Miro. Anyone else you just recall back? I said, oh yes, those experiences were great. Some people can say Zoom, Canva, whatever that is. Love to see that in the comments. As well as your as you're thinking about that product, okay, Ahmed said Miro, love Miro as well, like super easy. They make it super simple for you to sign up for it. Now, this is quick question now here. How many of you are still using that tool today? Just type yes or why or something in the comments. So guys, Ahmed says yes. Craig, Patrick says Canva is great. Ashraf is great also. How many of you still using that? So really the foundation here and the first point I want to make around is your company's growth really depends. Like growth starts in that first impression. Now logically it makes sense. We think about we think about first impressions in job interviews. How many of you have got made a great first impression and that led into a great job? Or even with dates, like a great first impression in meeting somebody for the first time turn into a partnership or some kind of relationship. Really, like if that experience is great, it could lead into something great. But if that first impression is bad, like if that first impression is bad in a job interview, chances are you're not going to get that job. And it's the same thing with products. I want to show some data, like 3 data points around why why me just saying this with analogy isn't just an analogy. It's not just a story. There's actually data that backs this. One of them is from Profitwell. We did a study a couple of years ago in 2019 where they studied over 500 B2B and B2C companies, and across the board from 3 weeks, 6 weeks to 9 weeks, the retention rates when the onboarding experience is positive for the user, the retention rate is a lot higher. It's like 3 to 5 percentage points higher than it is with ones that had terrible experiences with onboarding. Really, really interesting point here that this brings, that they've studied that 500 companies. Now I want to take a micro look at one example with HubSpot. HubSpot had a tool called HubSpot Sidekick, and what they found was just a 10% improvement in the first week resulted in a 25% improvement in retention after 10 weeks. So think of onboarding like a snowball. When it's rolling down a hill, it starts off small, but it gets bigger and bigger. And it's the same thing with onboarding. It's like just a small thing early on in the customer journey, but it can have huge impacts weeks later in terms of retention. This is from Dan Wilchnock. He was one of the growth manager in the HubSpot Sidekick team. He really did an interesting presentation there, and you can find it at danwilchnock.com that you can find this data point. The last data point that I want to share here is a quote from David Scott, and he's a general partner at Matrix Partners, which is a VC firm that invests in a lot of SaaS. And he made this observation, and once again, he's like seen thousands of different SaaS companies, and he found that in working with those SaaS portfolio companies, there are two main causes of churn. And he said the failure to successfully onboard a customer is the main reason. And churn, if people are not familiar with that, is when people leave and cancel their plan. And the second reason is the loss of that champion who drove that purchase. So really, like what I'm trying to state here is that user onboarding sets up that foundation, that once again, first impression for people to love and leave the product for good. So that's super important. Why onboarding is super critical. Any type of growth, and often it's forgotten. It's often, I call it the ugly duckling of growth, because typically when people think about growth, there's the sales and marketing side. You're trying to acquire as many users as possible. Then you got the product side, which is like trying to implement the product roadmap. And there's this middle ground where the baton is dropped, and really like it's super critical, and it needs to be more intentional for a lot of companies around this. So the problem, yeah, it's so important. The problem is often that it's forgotten. Like I said, it's the ugly duckling, and there's data that shows this. There's data from Intercom that they looked at like over 200 different types of companies, and they found that the first like 40 to 60% of first time users sign up and then never log in again after that. And really that's a scary metric, because that's they're already coming in, and they're not getting that great first impression, and they're leaving even before they got to see the value of the product. If you're in the consumer space, is even worse, especially if you're a mobile app. And there's this data from Quatra that 95% of people who sign up and download an app for the first time deletes it after 90 days. So You think about like the last time you downloaded a mobile app, like chances are you're not using it anymore and really deleting it. I love Craig chiming in. Think of all the money spent on acquiring all those customers. You're totally right, especially if there's acquisition involved and all the effort trying to acquire users and those webinars, those ads, like all of that effort at the very top of the funnel are wasted effort if they're not really sticking around for the long term. So, I mean, just think about like what are some reasons most new users don't stick around? Like, I think we're getting here now. What are some reasons? I'd just love to see it in the comments. What are some reasons why you didn't stick around? Like, what are some experiences you've had in terms of onboarding where you're like, oh man, this really annoyed me, and here's some of the reasons why I didn't stick around. So Greg said, literally forgot about the product. Varun said, absurd learning curve. You're totally right. Ahmed said, no long term value. Rashid said, communication failure. Running into issues with the product right off the bat. All of those stuff, good points. Uh, I can summarize all the typical reason why most users don't stick around, and it goes back to the psychology around new users. This quote that I love from Scott Belsky, the chief product officer at Adobe. He said, in the first 15 seconds, every new experiences, people are lazy, vain, and selfish. Like think about that for a second. Think about the last time you signed up for an app. Like what what were some of the questions you were that were in your mind? Like you're probably thinking, what is this? Why did I sign up for it? Why did Craig made me sign up for this? How is this gonna make me look good? How is this gonna help me? What is the value of this? All of this, and guys, is getting to it, not achievable or rewarding. I think that's really where it's all about. Is people are now getting with the abundance of different products and apps out there. We've gotten less and less, more less and less patient, and we really want to see the value as quickly as possible. And really that's what this game is all about, is to getting people to that value as quickly as possible so they can stick around, and making sure that they're not running into issues and getting once again to the desired outcome. This whole time concept there's a concept in product that some of you might be familiar with called time to value, and it really is the amount of time it takes for people to see the value of your product, to experience the value of your product. And really it's about getting them there and getting them to stick around is the name of the game, especially when it comes to improving your onboarding experience. So the question really we have today is how do you reduce your time to value? To improve your onboarding, we have to reduce that time to value. And I want to share with you this simple framework that we've been using to with different clients that we have a product led and different students, called the bowling alley framework. And essentially in bowling, what you want to do is hit all this white pins at the end of this 60-foot lane. Essentially, when you hit all the pins, that's a first strike. In this framework, the first strike is when users achieve the desired outcome for the first time. Now, the straight line onboarding really is the minimum number of steps required for people to experience that value. So we're trying to minimize the number of steps, the number of button clicks. And to do that, we have this four-step process that we use over and over again. And I'm just going to be walking through this, and then we're going to have a little exercise together right after this. But there is a worksheet or a cheat sheet available. I'm just going to drop it in the link here in the chat. Feel free to grab it as a PDF that goes through all these 4 steps. And we're just going to apply this example twice, actually, right now together. So let me know if you're ready. Let's jump right in here. So the very first step is really identifying what user success is for your product. I liken this to, if you're going on a road trip, you want to make sure that you have a clear destination, right? Or else you'll be wasting resources like your gas, your oil change, and all the other time that you have. You want to have a destination. And really that's about identifying that user success. The question around this is whether why are your users signing up for your product? And it sounds so simple, but often when we think about when we try to answer this question as growth people or business owners or entrepreneurs, we often jump right in about describing our product. But at the end of the day, we're here to upgrade our users. That's really our goal here, is to level up our users. And we want to frame our perspective around this. There's this amazing analogy that I got from Samuel Ulick from useronboard.com. Like, if you ever played Mario, the whole goal is to save the princess from this bad guy named Bowser. But you start off as small Mario, and when you grab this flower, this white flower, you become a Super Mario that can shoot fireballs and defeat your enemies. And often we focus on the product, the flower, and it's like, oh, look at this flower, it's white, it has a red thing in the middle. And really what we want to be focusing in on is this amazing person that Mario becomes. All of this is captured by this quote from Kathy Sierra. She wrote this amazing book called Badass: Making Users Awesome, and her quote, and I really love this because it's often forgotten, that we all, even I often forget, is that we need to upgrade our users, not our product. Build better cameras, build better photographers. The camera or the product you're doing is really there to make better workers or better employees or better growth people, whatever that quote unquote better version of themselves is really what we're driving at. And if you're familiar with the jobs to be done theory, this is exactly what this is implying, is that when people use a product, they use it to upgrade a specific workflow or a different kind of life. And really what this is getting at is we are here to upgrade our users. And I know we're getting here a little bit deeper, but my point with all of this is that onboarding isn't just an act of product adoption. Sure, we're trying to get people to adopt our product, but at the end of the day, in the eyes of the user, it's about transforming the life. It's just transforming how they do their work. If I go back to the example with Calendly, uh, you know, my life was never the same again. Calendly really changed the way that I book meetings with folks. And think about the other products that you use. Like earlier, you mentioned Miro, you mentioned other tools like Ahrefs. It changed the way that your process for doing things that you use the product now for. So what this is getting at is really about that life transformation. Now I want to dig a little bit deeper into that because it sounds very abstract. And I want to give you three examples, three ways that product upgrade our users. So the three ways, the first one is something that we're already quite familiar with, is the functional upgrade. And this is ones where there's a saying from Peter Levitt, this professor at Harvard, that people don't want to buy quarter-inch drill. They want a quarter-inch hole to hang a picture frame. If you're familiar with that, like, people are not buying the drill, they're buying it to make that hole to hang that picture frame. So it really goes back to that upgrade, that particular reason, that functional thing that the user is trying to do, the desired outcome they're trying to achieve with your product. And often when we ask, when we describe our product, this is usually what we go to first. It's like the thing that the user is trying to achieve with a product. That's just one of three way we upgrade our users. Often we forget the other two, and they're super important as well. The second one is emotional, because humans are not just functional beings, we're also very emotional beings. And really, this is how customers want to feel or avoid feeling as a result of achieving the desired outcome. Now, I give this example with Walt Disney, where sure, they have movies with movies with Marvel. Now they own Marvel, they own Star Wars, they have the different theme parks, but really the emotion they're trying to achieve with all of that is happiness. And any kind of product has an emotional upgrade related to it. Think about going back to the example with Calendly. One of the emotions I was trying to avoid is the feeling of frustration. I was frustrated with going back and forth with a podcast guest and trying to get a specific time with them to book. And using Calendly now, I've avoided that feeling. And particularly for your product, humans are using it, right? If humans are using it, and humans are also emotional beings, there's an emotional component to them using that particular product. So you want to try to understand that feeling, or that feeling that they're trying to avoid or trying to achieve, particularly with your product. That's the second emotion upgrade that your products bring. The third upgrade here is around social upgrade, and I find this is super important as well because, like, once again, we're going back to we're dealing with humans, and humans are social beings. And one of the things that you want to think about is how customers want are perceived or want to be perceived by their peers, their family member as a result of using your product. And sure, things like Facebook and Twitter, those are social media. So there's a social component to it. But any type of product has a social component to it because it's being used in a social setting, whether that's in a workplace or in a family setting. So here's, I really love this quote from Canva, and we're going to be digging into Canva a little bit. Canva is this easy way to create logos and design and different other things easily because they have a bunch of templates around it. And look at how they use that social upgrade in this ad. No design experiences is no problem. Canva makes it easy for anyone to create professional designs that are sure to get you noticed. That word get you noticed really goes deep into that social component to what their product does. Because imagine somebody like me who is a math geek. I studied math in university and I created design in Canva. And somebody says, "Wow, Ramli, I didn't know you can design. I thought you were just an analytical nerd. How were you able to create this logo?" Like those are things that you are subliminal to using a product is really that impact that on how they're perceived by their colleagues, their bosses, and things like that. So whether you're B2C or B2B, you also want to be really finding out that social upgrade that users are trying to achieve with that, whether it's making them look professional in front of their clients or trying to make them look professional in front of their colleagues. So really something to think about. All of that you want to think about, and this now all connects to your product, and just some things to think about as well is what ways do your users level up when they use your product. So whether you're in your customer, I just want to see it in the comments here, especially if you're working in a particular product, but even for Growth University, like what are some ways that this product, this training program is upgrading their you guys? I'd just love to hear it in the chat, or maybe I can even ask Craig, like what are some emotional, social, and some functional upgrades that you're achieving with Growth University?
Oh man, putting me on the spot. I love it though. And this is really fun because these are not things that we talk a lot about activation, all these strategies, but we don't really get into the emotional side as much, at least in a lot of my programs and stuff. Yeah, I think like for us, it's around first of all being accessible. So like being a backstop for founders. Like if you've got questions, we're going to answer your questions. I mean, we don't have time to get to every single thing, but we try to be accessible and we try to provide the fastest path to getting answers to your growth questions as possible. And even that messaging is shifting more or less in real time as we've learned more about the market.
So that's totally true. Emotionally, one of could be confidence as well, right? Confidence to run growth. Is would you say that correct? Like confidence
Yeah,
are
I think confidence, I think like in these kind of emerging markets, there's just a lot of questions that people have, and
mm,
there's not a lot of best practices yet in a lot of this stuff, similar to what you guys are doing, right? Like all of the frameworks that you're building, all of those things, you're trying to build a common set of nomenclature and like an actual framework that is a one to many where a lot of companies can
right.
benefit. I mean, those are themes that we're also like super into.
No, it's totally true. Yeah, I mean, like that. It goes. Those frameworks provide confidence in uncertainty. Like whenever you're trying something new, especially with growth, it's like I don't know if I don't know if I'm doing something dumb. I don't
Right.
know if I'm messing up something here. And you're totally right there. All those frameworks that you're building out here is building that confidence at the end of after the end of this program. I love that. I see some responses here from Amit saying staying current, resolving blocking issues. Um, that one thing that resonate with our team, the reason for signing up, the ability to sounding board for growth ideas we have, and someone to build growth playbooks to use. That's totally true, right? The other stuff that we also mentioned is around social component, like seeing yourself be like the expert in growth here could be something super important to somebody, to be seen by expert with their peers and their colleagues eventually. Uh, yeah, it's definitely awesome. Thank you so much. So this is I'm working my way backwards. This is the process that we have. What is success for users? Because we want to get them there. We want to get them to achieve that functional, that emotional, and the social upgrade. That's what onboarding is about now. Let's get them to that success state, that emotion state as quickly as possible. Once we have that first strike now is now within your product. The first strike is that thing that they do within your product that implies that they achieve, that indicates that they're about to achieve user success. And this is where it can be super obvious and simple, or it can get very messy at the same time, because now you're trying to find that one key product action that indicates user success. Now for some products like Airbnb, it's quite simple. It's when they make that first booking. So when they finally make the payment to book a place in Airbnb, that's a first strike. That's when they're indicating they're about to achieve their first strike. Now, if it's Zoom, it could be setting up, hosting their first workshop or their first call, whatever that is. It's obvious also with Zoom what that first strike is, that key product action. Now for Calendly as well, it's quite simple. Where you book that first meeting is an indication of a first strike, where they book that first meeting with somebody outside of themselves, right? Not booking within themselves. Now, some other stuff is quite hard, especially if your product can do multiple things, especially if you have what I call a Swiss Army knife of a product, where your product can do X, Y, and Z. Think about like a CRM where there is multiple things you can do there. What is the first strike for that? What is the key product action that your users want to try to achieve with that? Because you want to be driving people to that particular action. And I'm just curious, how many of you have like a product that has multiple use cases? Just type yes or Y. If you just have one use case, just type one. Just type one in the comment as well. Yeah, so if you do have multiple, all right, it's one. That's awesome. So now you have a clear one use case here. There's multiple ways to look at it. If you do have multiple use cases, there could be one use case that you focus on in the beginning, that you lead them to that key product action that opens up many things. But the other option here, and this is more advanced, that you want to think about as you have more use cases, is you want to look at it as a segment. You want to segment your users right from the get-go. So there's this app called Wave. It's a financial tool for different kind of for entrepreneurs, and they have three core use cases: to send professional invoices, manage your accounting, and run effortless payroll. So as I was signing up for this, they asked me from the get-go exactly what my goal was for Wave with their tool. And there's also a fourth option, not sure yet. And what's really cool with Wave is as you're selecting this, you're also self-selecting what your first strike would be. What is success for you? What is success for that user within the product? So if somebody selects send professional invoices, the first success for that user is sending their first invoice. If it's managing accounting, it's connecting their invoice to their accounting software or their bank account to Wave. If it's running effortless payroll, maybe it's sending a test payroll or running their first payroll within Wave. So you, by segmenting users very closely at the very beginning of a user's life cycle or the customer journey, you can really like drive people to specific goals within the product, as well as now you're thinking about product tours. We're going to talk a little bit about this later, or this experiences. You can drive people that you can customize the experience for each one of these very, very closely. Any questions about this? Questions? If people are still here with me, I usually use this to make sure people are still here with me. Just type 5 in the comments if you're still here with me. Just type 5 if you're like, yeah, let's keep going here. Let's keep going. Awesome. Thank you.
Loving it. Lots of 5s.
Awesome, Daniel. Thank you. All right. All right. I got 5 there. Awesome. Thank you. So once you have success, you know what the destination of your road trip, you know what goal your user's goal is. Now you can drive that path, that minimum number of steps to lead them there. And the way that we do this is whether using post-it notes or other tools like Trello, and even Miro, which somebody mentioned earlier. So what you want to do is write down every single step from the very first touch point to all the way to them achieving that first strike and seeing which ones are critical to each step. So first step is to map it out. And for let me give an example here with Snappa, and very similar to Canva, where Snappa helps you create like different kind of logos and templates online easily with a snap. So what they do is that, and we mapped it out for them. This is actually one of our clients. This is a simplified version of their initial onboarding experience. So once again, it was definitely more than 10 steps, but I just wanted to show a critical point here in a bit. So here, once again, I'm mapping out every single step in a post-it note. So click on get started free from the homepage, fill out email, fill out password field again, fill out password field again, go to inbox to confirm email, click on verify my email address, select design template, add your own pictures, edit design, and download design. So it's very clear. Every single field that I had to fill out as a user is his own post-it note, as well as every single button click. Because in a bit we're going to review or vet each step to make sure that it is absolutely necessary for us to go with that there. Now, you can also use Trello. So you can map out Trello. You can map out the experience using Trello, where each card is a step within that experience, or Miro or Mural or any other collaboration tools that you want to use. I use Google Slides as well, or Google Jamboard. Super easy. So once you've mapped that out, comes the fun part, is where we vet every single step. And we use a red, yellow, and green process at product led, where the red, when each step will label red if it's steps that can be eliminated, yellow if it's steps that can be delayed, and then green are steps that are mission critical. And obviously we use data here. So we're going to look at the user flow using tools like Google Analytics and Mixpanel, as well as user interviews that we've gathered to find what are steps where it can be eliminated because people are getting stuck there and it's absolutely not necessary. What are yellow steps that can be delayed after that first strike because it's absolutely non-critical to getting them to that success. This could be customizing their picture or customizing their name. And the very last one is green. Those are absolutely mission critical steps that people have to achieve with that. So going back to the example with Snappa, click on get started for free, fill out email, all of that stuff. And one of the things that we found here, especially based on the data, is we found that a lot of people were getting stuck here where they have to confirm the email address after signing up. How many of you have signed up for something and then they're like, go to your inbox to click on verify your email address? Like I'm seeing Greg raise up their hands. For them, we saw in the data that like over 40% of people actually don't click this email. They don't check back to their, so there was a huge bottleneck in terms of the experience. And sure, maybe they're trying to weed out spammers, which there's other ways to do that using or CAPTCHA or other things. But just based on the data, this is a huge bottleneck that we found. So what we suggested to them was, hey, let's remove this for now. So we're going to label that as red. And really we just wanted to A/B test this for a month to see what would happen. And we found right away that more people were getting into the product, trying it out, and more people were actually ended up converting because they were seeing the value of the product. And like within 4 weeks of that experiment, we found like an increase in MRR right away by 20% for that batch, that cohort that didn't have to check their inbox. So that's just one example, and I don't suggest this for every tool. I mean, there are some situations like fintech or other things where you want that sense of security, so that two-factor email verification is super important. But this is an example of what this can really do when you identify a bottleneck using your data. What we're going to try to do now as well is we're going to do this together. I know I gave you this example, but we're going to do a red, yellow, and green process where I know we don't have data and we're going to be using Canva as an example here. But I just wanted to use this as a jumping off point for discussion around different onboarding tactics. Super simple to play this game. Type R in the comments when we get there. If you think that step is absolutely unnecessary and there's something they should cut, type Y in the comments if you think it's something they should delay after they've achieved that first strike, and type G in the comments if you think it's absolutely necessary for them to get that. So let's play this game. So where the example here is Canva. Now Canva again is an easy tool to create any kind of design, like presentations, video, logo, flyer, social media posts. So the first strike here is really designing your first design and downloading it. So that's where we want to drive users to create the first design and download it. So the first step here is to sign up. So click sign up with email, get started with Canva. For me, I like to sign up with email just because I don't like connecting my Facebook or Google to anything. So I fill out my name, my email, my password, and click get started. So once again, this process, every field is a post-it note and every button click is a post-it note. So here's the first game here. So let's vet the step. I'd love to see your thoughts on this in the comments. Jump right away. Jump right. What will you be using Canva for? And we'll use this to recommend design and templates, especially for you. There's teacher, the student, there's personal, small business, large company, nonprofit, and charity. So I'm curious what your thoughts are in here. Is this R? Is this Y? Is this G? I'd love to see your thoughts. Greg says G. Varun says Y. Eofi said Y. Anybody who chose R to cut this would love to share exactly why they thought it should be cut. Any brave souls want to share their thoughts about why they chose what they chose for this, or it could be even your specific choice. Why did you choose your option here? Okay, so Ahmed said it's not necessary because of suggestion. Key is to create. Awesome, Ahmed. Thank you for sharing that. We'll get to this. Can this info be later, Varun? Yes, this could be delayed as well. Awesome. I'm seeing some discussion here. This is absolutely necessary. We'll get there. Often when I see this question, I'm very skeptical. The reason why is I'm thinking they're trying to figure out what I am so that they can send salespeople to go after me to say, hey, Ramli, you said you're a teacher. So that's a good example of why this sometimes should be delayed, but we'll get this in a bit, exactly why this, I believe, is very important. So actually, let's jump in. This is exactly why it's important. So in this case, I chose small business. And one of the things that this does really well is now once you choose small business, the problem that Canva has is they have thousands of templates. And what this can do is really make it longer for people to decide what to pick. There's this psychological principle called Hicks law, where the more options you give people, the longer it'll take them exponentially to make a choice. So by segmenting it early on, what they were able to do is tell me what the popular options were for that particular segment. So here's popular options for small business: Instagram posts, logo, Facebook posts. So if now that we know this, hopefully it's clear to you that, hey, they're not just segmenting me to be called by salespeople. They're actually making it easier for users to pick an option out of multiple options. And this is a tactic that you can use for your onboarding, especially if there's multiple options there, is to try to segment people early on to minimize the option set early on. Just something to think about as well. Once I've selected Instagram posts here, I'm got into a product tour, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around this as well. And very clear, it's 4 steps. Step 1 out of 4, choose a template. Step 2 out of 4, here's where you edit. Step 3 out of 4, add your own photos and videos. Step 4 out of 4, here's your publishing. And this, let's play this game again. Was this product tour necessary at all? So type R if you think this is not. Type Y if you think that this is something that they can delay after the first strike, or type G if you think that this is something that they should be able to do. So I'm seeing G's here. I love Ahmed keeps bringing up learning curve. I love it. You're totally right. That's learning curve. I'm seeing a lot of G's here. Awesome. So a lot of keeping this Um, Good question here, and your so you said why there. So I love all this discussion here. I love how simple it is. It's 4 steps. It's very clear. And one thing that I do want, Mateo said, is if it's not super easy to start without guiding instructions, otherwise are totally right. So I think Mateo's getting a little bit to this where you want to identify like it, you want to identify if your users like product tours or not in the first place. I think for most marketers or most people who are using Canva, where they're impatient, this product tour might be very useful. But keep in mind, if it's something like a user segment that hates product tours, for example, that I can think of is if you're targeting developers, most developers hate product tours, right? That's just something to think about, especially like my background is a software developer, and I remember I just want to really dig into the different types of data there, and really just something to really think about here. Barun made another point. Couldn't they have jumped to a modified version of this from the beginning? Blank canvas template, each search field in the beginning. Totally right. It's something that they could have done. Greg is pointing out I hate product tiers, but also have software background. There you go. The other so my suggestion around product tours: identify if your users are getting annoyed by it. Look at your close rate. The average close rate for completion rate, average completion rate for product tours is around 2 to 3%, just based on the data we've seen. So you're seeing lower than that. That means that there's something wrong there. As well as one other suggestion I've been getting at is around giving people the option to go through the product tour in the first place. So like just asking, hey, Ramli, do you want a product tour? Do you want a tour of your, or do you just want to jump in? And often giving the people the power to choose, I'm seeing a higher completion rate with product tours itself. Not good point again. My thought would be to delay explanation until engagement, until they want more help. Totally right. It's giving them option to do the product tour once again. One final thing here. So I've chosen a template in this scenario, and now it's time to download it. After I've downloaded it, I get this modal or this pop-up that says success. If you download it and start automatically, download now. Save time by scheduling your posts. Try Canva Pro for free for 30 days. So one final question here is to vet the step. RYG, curious what your thoughts are here. Oh, we're still talking about product tours. So Patrick, you're totally right. You want to measure people who came back after the product tour or not. That is a totally the right thing. Deo says R, Craig says Y, Josh says G. Any other thoughts around this last screen here? Whether this is totally worth it or not, RY or G. I guess this depends on what they've tested for the best time to use upgrade option. Totally right. This is something you want to experiment with as well. How would the product tour differ for? Oh, we'll get there. We'll get to the questions in a bit, Stephanie. G, I think it depends on the first step, the sign up. Awesome. I'm seeing different. So I love the question around somebody who brought up the experimentation here, and really like, is this the best moment to experiment, to ask for an upgrade to their Canva, to upgrade to a free trial of their pro version? Just something to think about as well. Is usually when people achieve a success state will be a great time to ask for something. Now it seems like that's not the focus of this message, because the success is so small that really that's not the main focus of this. So it could be something that they can experiment with or really take a look around. I'm seeing, love the comments here that I'm seeing here. If first step sign up was yellow, this would be needed now. If first step was green, you don't need this here. I love all this discussion, but really, if you're doing this for your product, you want to use your data to see how many people are sticking around after this experiences. But you want to be doing this by yourself, but also do it with your team. So the very final step is finally get other people in your team to really figure out, are you all on the same page? Especially sales might want something else in there, or maybe marketing. Are there stuff that you've removed that other team members want to be added? Do users learn everything they need to know and achieve the first strike here? And once you have that, you gather all of the green steps, and that's essentially your straight line onboarding. experiences. So that's all. And once again, there's this cheat sheet that we provided for you as well. I'm ready to jump into some questions in a bit, but all of that step is just a simple this a simple part of that Eureka framework that I talked about in that book that we put together. And really, it's all about like this steps that we've seen over and over again and applied to different companies to improve their onboarding experiences. That includes building a team, understanding your users, which we talked about today, refining that milestone that for your onboarding, evaluating your new users journey, which we did right now, and then keeping new users engaged, and then finally analyzing those results. And we put all of that together in a book for you to check out. You can download the first chapter for free at onboardingbook.com, but it's also available anywhere on Amazon for like $5-10, which is not a lot. And we wanted to make it affordable for everybody. So with that, I'd love to jump into some questions. I know we've already had a few questions up on top, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. But if you do have questions after this, we have about 12 minutes to get as well. Is you can send me an email, ramli@productled.com. I'm also active on Twitter at ramlijohn to answer any questions that you might have, or on LinkedIn as well. So happy to answer any questions that you might have.